I find his lack of balance disturbing.
It's all that data, bro. With SLT mega deals, he's got double data for the next 2 months.
Making headlines for First at 9. Inclement weather. Despite rising number of affected, people are getting some reprieve in the north.
Numbers been decreased up to 8,000 right now. So people starting to move to their houses.
Clear stance. Speaker of Parliament makes evident that his stance on the position of the opposition leader is already communicated to the House. Bleak outlook. The central bank says that continued low economic growth highlights need for implementing broad-based structural reforms without delay. Back on track. The government is re-engaging with monetary agencies after political impasse.
All these discussions have already, at a very preliminary stage, begun.
On the verge of defeat, Sri Lanka given the daunting target of 660 runs by New Zealand.
මේ උත්සව සමයේ ස්මාර්ට් ඇන්ඩ්‍රොයිඩ් තාක්ෂණයෙන් එන සිංග විස්ටා TV එකක් මිලදී ගන්නා ඔබට හිත පිරෙන්න වාසි රැසක් ඕනෑම සිංග ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරයකින්.
A very good evening and welcome to First at 9, another Derana 24/7, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now on to your local stories tonight. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe assures that the foremost place given to Buddhism in Sri Lanka will continue to be secured through the constitution. Addressing media following his visit to the temple of the Tooth Relic in Kandy and chief prelates of the Malwatu and Asgiri chapter this morning, the Premier said Buddhism will be protected through future activities as well.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe paid homage to the temple of the Tooth Relic in Kandy this morning. The Premier also visited the Asgiri Mahaviharaya and met with its chief prelate, Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Gnanaratana Thera. The Prime Minister then called on the Chief Prelate of the Malwata chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuwavi Sri Sumangala Thera.
I have discussed this matter with parties of the opposition as well as with the UNP. There was agreement that in the case of changes to the constitution, the foremost place given to Buddhism by way of Article 9 of the constitution will not be amended. We will also safeguard the unitary state of this nation. I have also informed the police and the CID to take stern action against those who damage and destroy Buddha statues as well as kovils.
කෝවිල් වලට ආණ්ඩුවෙන් මුදල් දෙනවා විශේෂයෙන්ම සකස් කරන්නට.
Speaker Karu Jayasuriya affirms that his stance pertaining to the post of opposition leader is already made clear before Parliament. Speaking at a special meeting with leaders of different faiths, the Speaker said that priority will be given to ensure that extremism and ethnic conflict will be eradicated and will not allow certain factions to spur hate between the North and South for political gain. He also added that he will not allow religious sites to be used to spread extremism among communities. Speaking on the political impasse experienced in the country in the recent months, the Speaker stated that even though the President offered him the position of Prime Minister, on several occasions he declined the position as he did not want to go against the public's mandate given to Ranil Wickremesinghe, he who is the rightful Prime Minister. The Speaker further noted that in the past 2 months, the political crisis is seen as the biggest defeat towards the country, and as to who emerged victorious is unimportant. He told religious leaders who attended the meeting that the independence of the judiciary is commended by the international community and is a pride to the nation. He further noted that this bears testament to an impartial judiciary to the international community and prevents international judges from intervening in matters of the country. The northern province continues to feel the ill effects of the prevalent inclement weather, with the number of people affected nearing 120,000. Data released by the Disaster Management Centre places the number of affected families at 38,209 as rains battered the region for almost a week. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe meanwhile convened a meeting at the Kilinochchi district secretariat today, where he instructed officials to hasten the dispatch of relief items to those affected. Our humanitarian initiative, Derana, also continues to work around the clock to ensure that donations contributed by you, members of the public, are handed out to those who are in need at this critical time.
Day-to-day activities came to a standstill across 5 districts in the northern province, which include Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Mullaitivu, Mena and Vaunia, owing to inclement weather experienced over the past week or so. Currently, over 3,900 persons belonging to 1,211 families are given refuge across 12 relief camps in Kilinochchi. Mullaitivu, which felt the brunt of the torrential rain, has 4,889 affected persons belonging to 1,566 families who are currently housed in 11 relief camps in the district. Meanwhile, personnel from the tri-forces have come together to clean out water wells so that clean drinking water can be once again made available. In addition, a special discussion on the compensation for those displaced was spearheaded by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Kilinochchi District Secretariat today.
I wish to thank all district secretaries and the administration for ensuring that relief is provided to those affected. Tri-forces and police too have worked tirelessly. We will first make sure that dry rations are distributed. Persons whose houses are affected will receive compensation with a minimum of 10,000 rupees. We're trying to provide this sum before the 31st of December. Attention should also be given to the health of the people. A team will be coming from the Colombo Municipal Council and will be visiting this area tomorrow. We have requested banks not to charge interest rates for loans taken out by families who have been affected by floods this month. We will hold discussions with them to see how we can provide relief for them. Many farmlands which have been destroyed will undergo an evaluation to ascertain the damage, and compensation will be given accordingly. Houses and agricultural land which have been insured will also be given funds. Ministers of Housing and Land will visit this area soon.
In the meantime, for the next 24 hours, rains are expected to ease, with signs of some relief for the affected areas.
Light showers may occur in the northern and eastern coastal areas. Showers or thundershowers may occur at a few places in Ratnapura, Koll and Matra district after 2 p.m. Many fair weather will prevail elsewhere. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in the central, southern and western provinces during the morning. There may be a temporary localized strong winds during thundershowers. The general public is kindly requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by lightning activity.
Meanwhile, Assistant Director of the Disaster Management Centre, Pradeep Kodipilli, had this to say about the current situation.
The situation of the northern province is getting normalized so far, and numbers being recorded tomorrow evening, more than 10,000 people being temporarily accommodated in the safe evacuation centers, but the numbers being decreased up to 8,000 right now. So people starting to move to their houses, premises, and the post-disaster management activities are being conducted with the help of the military and the police and the disaster management officials at ground level. The coordination and the funds being released by the National Disaster Relief Services Centre and all the divisional secretary areas that all the officers are coordinating with that particular missions.
Meanwhile, the 57th Division of the Kilinochchi Security Forces headquarters continued to hand out relief items to those affected in Kilinochchi today. Furthermore, the Singapore Karuna organization too distribute dry rations and school equipment to children housed at relief camps.
Thank you, Singapore!
Our humanitarian initiative, Derana, too have been receiving donations from the public today at our headquarters in Colombo.
Mansat Derana, those who involved in all the disasters every time. We are very happy to come here and do this donation for Mansat Derana.
Several organizations including Maliban Biscuit, Vijay Products and Arali Rice too joined hands with Manusat Derana to provide relief to those affected. Students from Ashoka College in Colombo extended a helping hand to Manusat Derana with not only providing relief goods but also packaging them. We at Derana wish to thank you, the members of the public, for your continued support in this endeavour, where our own brothers and sisters in the north are at their most vulnerable.
We now bring you a harrowing story where a child who is barely 2 years of age was subjected to utmost cruelty. The child's mother as well as her paramour had physically abused the child, with the paramour in particular scorching the infant. The child's mother is currently under arrest, but her paramour has absconded, with the child currently receiving treatment at the Siambalandua base hospital.
A child of 1 year and 10 months in Siambalandua has been abused by the child's mother's paramour and has sustained over 100 burns. The mother of the child also physically abused the boy and is taken into police custody. Her paramour, however, has absconded.
He was drunk when he went home. He asked the child to be kept on the floor when the child was in his mother's arms. Once on the floor, the child was beaten by a flashlight and it broke apart. The child started screaming and I asked them not to beat the child up. This particular incident happened on the 24th.
The abused child is currently receiving treatment at the Siambalandua base hospital. Preliminary investigations revealed that around 100 spots on the child's body were burned by cigarettes, including genitalia. Siambalandua police are conducting further investigations into the incident.
And with that, let's cross over to a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has a bleak outlook on the external sector, saying that the widening trade deficit, tight conditions in the global markets and excessive speculation in the domestic market exerted pressure on the exchange rate, depreciating the rupee by 15.9% against the US dollar thus far. In addition, the CBSL re-emphasized that in order for the country to address its low economic growth, broad-based structural reforms must be implemented without further delay. Following its monetary policy review, the Monetary Board of the CBSL decided to maintain policy interest rates at their current levels. Issuing a communique today, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka announced that it decided to maintain its standing deposit facility rate and standing lending facility rate at 8% and 9% respectively, taking into consideration current and expected developments in the domestic economy and the domestic financial markets, as well as the global economic environment. It's done with the broad aim of stabilizing inflation at mid-single-digit levels in the medium term to enable the economy to achieve its potential growth. The communique further noted that real GDP growth is likely to be low in the fourth quarter of this year as well, before gradually picking up next year. The Department of Census and Statistics announced earlier this month that the economy grew by 2.9% year-on-year during the third quarter compared to the revised growth of 3.6% in the second quarter. The CBSL highlighted that the continued low economic growth re-emphasizes the need for implementing broad-based structural reforms without further delay. Giving its comment on inflation, the central bank noted that a favorable outlook for inflation can be expected in the near term. However, volatile global commodity prices, possible weather-related disruptions to domestic supply chains due to unpredictable weather patterns, and the possible pass-through of the effect of the rupee depreciation in recent months to domestic prices
posed risks to the inflation outlook. The CBSL noted that current projections show that inflation on average will remain below 5% in 2019 and stabilize in the range of 4 to 6% thereafter with appropriate policy adjustments. Meanwhile, the CBSL cautioned that the external sector continues to face international and domestic headwinds as the trade deficit widened further in the first 10 months of 2018, with the expansion in import expenditure outpacing the growth of export earnings. However, moderation in import expenditure is expected in response to the measures adopted to curb imports of motor vehicles and non-essential goods, as well as the impact of the depreciation of the rupee. The widening trade deficit, tight conditions in the global markets and excessive speculations in the domestic market exerted pressure on the exchange rate, and the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated by 15.9% against the US dollar thus far during 2018 up to the 27th of December. Meanwhile, gross official reserves amounted to $7 billion at the end of November this year, providing an import cover of 3.7 months.
During the recent political impasse in Sri Lanka, it was alleged by the ousted UNP-led government that various monetary bodies halted disbursements to the country, owing to political turmoil in the country. With 12 days passing since the return of that government, we wanted to know what's being done to rectify the situation. To that end, First at 9 contacted State Minister of Finance Derana Wickramaratne, who said that discussions have begun at a preliminary stage with all Sri Lanka's international partners who lend money to the country. With dialogue resumed with aid agencies, the State Minister expressed hope that normal service will resume.
We've already indicated to the international lending agencies, including the IMF and the others, that we will have discussions with them commencing soon after the holiday season in financial markets, and we will take that process forward. So the IMF put on hold its final payment. Also, JICA, which was funding basically public transport systems and giving us a huge loan of $1.7 billion on a 40-year basis with a 12-year grace period and 0.1% interest, which is very, very concessionary, put it on hold as well. We are hoping to commence that discussion too. The Millennium Challenge Corporation was giving us a grant of about $480 million in managing traffic and traffic systems and so forth. That will also be supposed to be signing in December. Now that has been delayed because we will have to wait for the next meeting of the board of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. But all these discussions have already, at a very preliminary stage, begun.
The Colombo share price index ended 0.05% weaker at 6,015.23 today, with a turnover of 389.2 million rupees. It is, however, less than half of this year's daily average of 840 million rupees. Foreigners were net sellers of 69 million rupees of stocks. They have been net sellers of 13.4 billion rupees since the political crisis began. Let's now take a look at how the stock market performed this week.
During the week, the ASPI gained 0.2%, mainly due to price gains in counters such as Sri Lanka Telecom, Softlogic Life Insurance and Lanka Oryx Leasing Company. Similarly, the S&P SL20 increased by 0.2%. The average daily turnover for the week was down from last week to 431 million rupees. Banks, finance and insurance sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week, whilst the second highest was seen in diversified sector. Foreigners remained active for the week, closing as net buyers, where foreign purchases accounted for 33% of the total weekly turnover. A net foreign inflow of nearly 264 million rupees was recorded for the week. Out of the weekly turnover, crossings accounted for nearly 70%, which was a higher proportion than last week.
At the heels of Lonely Planet, one of the world's leading travel guides declaring Sri Lanka to be the top destination to be visited in 2019, another website has gone the same way, calling Sri Lanka to be the best destination in Asia for the year 2019. The declaration comes despite various foreign governments issuing travel advisories discouraging their citizens to visit the island over alleged political turmoil.
In October, Lonely Planet, one of the leading travel guides in the world, called Sri Lanka the world's best destination to travel in 2019. Less than a week following the global accolade, various countries issued travel advisories discouraging their citizens from visiting Sri Lanka owing to the recent political manifestations within the country. Amidst all these developments, Sri Lanka once more was voted the top destination in Asia for 2019 by world-renowned travel influencers and bloggers. Describing why Sri Lanka was given the top spot in Asia, the website says that Sri Lanka is definitely one of the trendiest destinations in travel for 2019.
In spite of difficulties we were facing last 2 months, the tourism arrival has increased by 16.8% during the month of November. When we compare the figures, 165,000 in November 2017, the 2018 figure is 195,000. Then month of December, we are confident that we will be able to have a positive trend with which we have already reached 2 million. So we will be able to succeed over 2.2 million in 2018. This shows how globally the traveler look at in Sri Lanka, and irrespective of the all travel advisories as well as various internal difficulties, the travelers have taken Sri Lanka as a very good country and also the hospitable country where the global community who recognize as a destination, we all together need to work hard and also get the maximum benefit of this global opportunity to prosper the tourism in the year 2019.
Now, the Sri Lankan rupee fell to a record low for a 6th straight session today on continued outflows of foreign funds, mainly from government bonds, as political uncertainty dented investor sentiment. The rupee hit an all-time low of 184 rupees and 7 cents against the dollar, surpassing its previous record of 182 rupees and 32 cents marked in the prior session. It has weakened about 5.4% since Sri Lanka's political impasse began on the 26th of October and slid 19.1% so far this year. Here's a look at your forex rates. Now, getting back to one of our local news now, leader of the National Freedom Front, parliamentarian Vimal Veeravangsa, alleges that the government desires to incite communal harmony for political gain. Speaking to reporters, he questioned the motive behind the establishment of a Ministry for Northern Development and speculated that it is set up to do the biddings of the Tamil National Alliance.
It is revealed today that following the unfavourable result of the local authorities' election, there was organised attempts to incite communal violence between Sinhalese and Muslims in Kandy and Ampara. Namal Kumara revealed with voice recordings that the communal conflict was done to the want of those in the Terrorist Investigation Division. We suspect whether attacks on Buddhist statues are similar to those with political agendas. The government wants a Sinhala Muslim conflict. The truth is that the Northern Development Ministry was formed to do the bidding of the Tamil National Alliance. Although the Tamil National Alliance says that they did not accept cabinet posts, money from the Ministry of Northern Development, which is under the Prime Minister, is used for projects identified by the likes of Sumandiran.
සුමන්තිරන්ලාගේ අභිලාෂයට අනුව ඔවුන් කියන ව්‍යාපෘති වලට පමණයි. දැන් මේ වන විට රාජ් පොලිසියෙන් වාර්තාවක් දීලා තිබෙනවා කියලා ප්‍රකාශයක් යනවා. ඝාතන සැලසුමක් පිළිබඳව කිසිම තොරතුරක් හෙළිවී නැහැ කියලා. DIG වරයෙක්
How can anyone from the government say that when a DIG is already in custody?
පෙනී යන්නේ මොකද්ද? පුහුල් ලොරා කරෙන් දෙන්නේ.
On international news, a partial US government shutdown is likely to continue into next week amid an impasse over funding for President Trump's proposed Mexico border wall. Both Congress chambers met for just a few minutes yesterday but took no steps to end the closure. The House and Senate will now meet again on Monday. Whether or not to fund the wall is the issue holding up the passing of a government funding budget. Both sides now seem to accept that dispute will continue into 2019.
Both chambers of the US Congress convened for only a few minutes late yesterday but took no steps to end a partial federal government shutdown before adjourning until next week. Showing little sense of urgency over the shutdown now in its sixth day, the Senate and the House of Representatives did nothing to restore funding for the roughly 20% of the government affected. The shutdown was triggered by Republican President Donald Trump's demand, largely opposed by Democrats and some lawmakers within his own party, that U.S. taxpayers provide $5 billion for a wall he wants to build along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Well, there is a sense of urgency, without question. This is the fifth shutdown I've been through, and I don't know of any one of them yet that's been successful. Let us put, personal things aside and work together, and let's see if we can't get something done. I hope it doesn't take weeks. It doesn't even have to say wall. It could be barrier, it could be fence, it could be, I don't know what, various term you could come up with. I think he came up with slats here the other day. I don't know where we are with negotiations, other than what I've been told by the leadership on my side. It makes no sense to vote on something the president won't sign. We're stuck. It's a matter of principle for the president. Border security is a very tough issue, always has been. It's tied into immigration, but just to get the government funded again is something that we have to do, and then we could work from there.
Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir has been demoted in a government reshuffle by the country's leader, King Salman. Jubeir will become Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, with Ibrahim Al-Assaf taking over as Foreign Minister. The murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul has shone a spotlight on the ultra-conservative Islamic nation.
Saudi King Salman has appointed former Finance Minister Ibrahim Al-Assaf as the new Foreign Minister in a major cabinet reshuffle, which also included changes to key national security posts. Assaf, who was detained briefly in the anti-corruption crackdown launched by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman last year, replaced Adel Al-Jubeir, who was shifted to a more advisory role as Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. The reshuffle came with the Saudi government trying to deal with intense international pressure over the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October. His articles in the Washington Post had been particularly critical of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the country's de facto leader. Last week, the kingdom announced the creation of 3 government bodies aimed at improving its intelligence operations.
The Unification Ministry says almost 1,000 North Korean defectors have had their personal data leaked after a computer at a South Korean resettlement center was hacked. A personal computer at the state-run center was found to have been infected with a malicious code. The ministry said this is thought to be the first large-scale information leak involving North Korean defectors. The hacker's identity and the origin of this cyber attack is not yet confirmed. The North Korean government does not know the identities of all citizens who have defected. Some may be considered a missing persons case, or they may have even been registered as dead. Some 997 North Korean defectors have now been informed that their names, birth dates and addresses have been leaked, but it is not clear what impact this will have. Analysts say there are some concerns that the leak could endanger the families of the defectors that still remain in North Korea. And with that, let's cross over to short commercial break. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Let's now take a look at your city by city forecast. And that's it for Mother Derana First at 9 for tonight. But before we go, since it's Friday and it's time for the good story, we are going to introduce you to Dr. Charles Beaker. Dr. Beaker is an underwater archaeologist. And with that, we end this edition of First 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.